Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the house you've lived in for decades, where you raised your kids, cooked thousands of meals, and planted tulips in the front yard every spring, now feels more like a burden than a blessing. The stairs that once kept you agile now threaten your balance. The quiet that once felt peaceful now feels isolating. And the maintenance that used to be manageable is now an overwhelming chore you didn't sign up for in your golden years. And here's the kicker. No one really prepares you for this crossroads moment when the question hits you square in the heart. Should I stay at home with help or move to assisted living? It's not just a question about logistics. It's a question about your independence, your dignity, your peace of mind, and yes, even your joy in everyday living. And the truth is, the wrong decision can leave you feeling trapped, lonely, or financially drained, while the right one can actually open the door to new friendships, renewed energy, and a deeper sense of security. I've walked this road myself and sat with neighbors, friends, and family who were struggling with it. And let me tell you, this decision is not black and white. And it's not something to make lightly or in a moment of panic after a fall or health scare. So today we're diving into the 5 essential questions you must ask before you make this life-altering choice. Because the truth is, what worked for your friend down the street might not be right for you, and what seemed like the obvious answer last year might need a second look today. And I promise you, by the end of this conversation, you'll feel more confident, more informed, and more in control of your future than you have in a long time. So stay with me, because this could be the conversation that changes everything. Now, let me take you back a few years. When my friend Harold, bless him, stubborn as a mule but kind as they come, refused to leave his house even after his second fall in the bathroom, he'd say, "I built this house with my own 2 hands. I'm not going anywhere." And I respected that, I really did. But I also saw the fear behind his eyes every time he stood up too fast or reached for something on a high shelf. And the truth is, independence means something different to everyone. For some, it's staying in the home they love, surrounded by familiar things, while for others, it's about shedding the burdens that come with that home and moving into a place where meals are prepared, medical care is close, and there's always someone to share a cup of coffee with in the morning. So the first question you really need to ask yourself is this: what kind of independence matters most to me right now? Is it about having full control over your space and schedule, even if it means hiring help? Or is it about having less to manage day to day, even if it means downsizing your living area? There's no wrong answer here, but there is a wrong assumption that independence only exists in your own home. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, that's not true. My neighbor Juanita, after her husband passed, moved into a lovely assisted living community not far from our neighborhood, and she told me she actually felt more independent there than she had in years. Why? Because she didn't have to rely on her daughter every time she needed a ride, or worry about cooking every meal, or spend her weekends wrestling with laundry and broken appliances. Instead, she was taking art classes, making new friends, and going to live music nights in the common area. Now tell me that doesn't sound like freedom. Of course, this doesn't mean assisted living is the right choice for everyone, but it does mean we have to look beyond the walls of our homes and think about independence in a broader, richer way. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, what kind of support would actually make your life easier? And what are you afraid of giving up that maybe, just maybe, isn't serving you anymore? Whether it's letting go of the lawnmower or the worry that people will think you've given up, these emotional barriers are real, but they shouldn't be the final word in your decision. So as we move forward in this journey together, keep that question in your heart. What kind of independence do I really want and need right now? Not last year, not 20 years ago, but today, in this season of life, because that honest answer will shape everything else we explore from here on out. Now that we've opened the door to thinking differently about independence, let's step into the reality that often gets overlooked when we're stuck in what I call the either-or trap. You know the one. where it feels like your only two choices are either tough it out at home, alone, or surrender your freedom to a facility that strips away everything personal. But real life isn't that simple, and frankly, neither are our needs at this age. We're not made from cookie-cutter molds, and the kind of support that works for someone recovering from a hip replacement isn't necessarily right for someone dealing with memory issues or chronic fatigue. So the second big question to ask is this: what level of care do I actually need, and how might that change over time? This is where we have to get real honest, even if it's a little uncomfortable. I remember sitting across the kitchen table from my cousin Deborah after she'd had a minor stroke, and she told me, "I'm fine, really. I just need someone to help with meals and drive me to appointments." But I could see the tremor in her hand as she tried to lift her teacup, and I gently said, "Deb, needing help doesn't mean you're helpless. It means you're wise enough to plan ahead." Because here's the thing, aging is unpredictable. Sometimes we're going strong one year and the next brings a new diagnosis or a setback that throws us off course, and the best decisions are the ones made before we're forced into them, not after we're in crisis. So take a moment and think about the tasks that are getting harder for you. Is it managing medications, getting groceries, bathing safely, remembering doctor's appointments? Some of these things can be handled beautifully with in-home care services, which can be customized to your needs and scheduled around your routine, giving you the comfort of home with the support of a trained professional. But other situations might point toward assisted living, especially if you're dealing with progressive conditions, mobility issues, or concerns about safety when you're alone. Now, one mistake I see too often is folks underestimating how quickly their situations can shift, and I don't say that to scare you, I say it because being proactive now gives you more options, not fewer. I had a dear friend named Louie, a retired bus driver with the biggest heart you've ever seen, and when he started having trouble remembering his insulin doses, his daughter helped him find a part-time nurse to check in twice a day, which worked perfectly for a while. But as his diabetes got more complicated, he needed more frequent care, and by the time they realized assisted living would be a better fit, the waiting list was 6 months long and the stress had worn him down. If they'd started the process earlier, he could have made that transition with less anxiety and more dignity. So take stock, not just of what you need today, but where you might be headed in the next couple years. It's not pessimism, it's just good planning, and it puts you in the driver's seat. And while we're on the subject, don't forget that emotional care is just as important as physical care. Feeling lonely, isolated, or overwhelmed by managing everything alone can affect your health just as much as high blood pressure or arthritis. And that's something a lot of people don't talk about enough. You might be functioning just fine on paper, but if your days feel empty or your sleep is restless because of worry, that's a sign your care needs go deeper than housekeeping or pill organizers, and that's perfectly okay to admit. Assisted living communities often offer something we rarely acknowledge: a built-in support system, a social structure that gives you interaction, stimulation, and routine, all of which are vital to our mental and emotional well-being, especially in a world that often treats older adults like background noise. But again, that doesn't mean assisted living is the only answer. In-home care can also provide companionship, meal sharing, even hobby support, if you find the right caregiver, and many folks thrive with just a few visits per week. The key here is tailoring the care to you, not the other way around, and being brave enough to say, "This is what I need, and I deserve to have it." So, whether you're fiercely independent, gently struggling, or somewhere in between, take a breath and give yourself permission to explore all the options without guilt or shame, because needing support is not a weakness. It's a wise, powerful choice that shows you value your own health and happiness. And that brings us naturally to another crucial point, one that often makes or breaks this decision. Who's going to help you coordinate all this, and how involved do you want your loved ones to be? That's what we're going to explore next. And trust me, it's a conversation worth having sooner than later. Because whether it's your adult children, a neighbor, or a trusted friend, knowing who's in your corner and how much they can realistically do changes everything. So let's dig into that in the next section, because that's where the rubber meets the road. Now let's really roll up our sleeves and talk about something that tends to sit quietly in the background until it suddenly becomes the most urgent thing in the room. Who's helping you navigate all of this, and how much are they really able or willing to do? I've seen it time and time again. A parent assumes their adult children will step in when needed, while the kids assume mom or dad has everything under control until a health scare exposes how thin that illusion really was. And suddenly, everyone's scrambling, emotions are high, and decisions are made in panic instead of peace. So the third key question you've got to ask is this: what kind of support network do I have, and what role do I want them to play? Notice I didn't say, what role should they play, because that's a fast track to guilt and unmet expectations, but rather, what role do I want them to play, because this is your life, and you have every right to define those boundaries with clarity and compassion. Now, in my case, when my arthritis flared up a few years ago, I had to get real honest with myself about how much I was leaning on my daughter, Angela. She was juggling work, her 2 teenagers, and checking in on me several times a week, and though she never once complained, I could see the wear on her face, so we sat down over coffee and talked openly about what was sustainable for both of us. And you know what? That conversation actually brought us closer, because we were both able to speak freely without pressure or assumptions, and it led to a hybrid solution, some in-home help for me, and more quality time together when we weren't both stretched too thin. These are the kinds of honest discussions that need to happen before there's a crisis, not after you've fallen or forgotten a medication or gotten lost on a walk. Because when emotions run high, people often freeze or overreact, and neither helps you feel empowered. Maybe your kids live out of state, maybe you never had children, or maybe you've always been the caregiver in your circle, and now you're wondering who you can lean on. That's okay, because support doesn't always come in a family package. Sometimes it's a friend you've shared bridge games with for years, or a neighbor who checks in regularly, or even a church group or a community center that offers elder services. What matters is identifying those people now and getting a sense of who's in your corner if things shift unexpectedly. And while we're at it, let's also acknowledge that asking for help can feel deeply uncomfortable for a generation that was taught to stand on its own 2 feet, no matter what. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Asking for help is one of the most courageous things you can do, because it means you care enough about your future to plan for it rather than react to it. And if you're sitting there thinking, I don't want to be a burden, let me stop you right there. That thought, while noble, can lead to isolation, burnout, and preventable emergencies. And I've seen too many good-hearted folks suffer in silence when all they needed was permission to share the load. This is also where professional services can make a world of difference. In-home care agencies often provide more than just physical assistance. They can help with care coordination, doctor appointments, medication tracking, and more. While assisted living communities offer built-in staff that reduces the pressure on your loved ones to do it all. And speaking of doing it all, let's be clear. No one can or should have to manage aging alone. Not you, not your children, not your friends, and certainly not your caregivers, because aging gracefully takes teamwork, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. So here's a gentle challenge. Take a moment today and write down the names of 3 people you trust, people who could either help you directly or help you make decisions. And then think about when the last time was that you checked in with them about your health, your hopes, or your worries, because those conversations are the lifeline that keep us connected and supported when things start to shift. And hey, if this conversation has already given you some clarity or made you feel a little less alone, I'd love for you to join this growing community of folks just like us. Folks who are navigating these big life decisions with grace, grit, and a whole lot of wisdom. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, not because of some algorithm or vanity metric, but because every week we talk through the real stuff, the stuff that affects our day-to-day lives, our dignity, and our peace of mind, and I promise you, you won't have to face any of it alone. I read every comment, I respond when I can, and I genuinely believe that the more we share, the stronger we become. So, if you've ever felt overwhelmed by this decision or unsure about how to bring your family into the conversation, this channel is your safe haven, your resource, and your circle of trust. Now, let's keep going because we haven't yet touched on one of the biggest game changers in this entire process, the financial side of the equation. And trust me, this next part might surprise you because sometimes the more expensive option actually saves you money in the long run. And we're going to break that down in a way that finally makes sense. All right, we've talked about independence, we've discussed care needs and support systems, and now we're diving into a subject that often keeps people up at night: money. That's right, the financial side of these decisions can feel overwhelming. And for many, it's the biggest hurdle to making a clear choice between staying at home with help or moving into assisted living. Here's the thing. Most people think that assisted living is always going to be more expensive than staying at home. But I'm here to tell you that isn't necessarily the case. You see, we often forget to factor in the hidden costs of staying at home, and those can add up quickly, especially when you need more help as time goes on. Let's take a moment to really dig into this, because understanding the true financial picture could be the key to unlocking a decision that feels both practical and affordable. So the fourth question you need to ask yourself is this: what are the true costs of staying at home versus moving into assisted living? Now, staying at home might seem cheaper on the surface. You're not paying for rent or a facility, right? But when you factor in the cost of in-home care, nurses, home health aides, housekeeping, meal delivery services, transportation, and even just keeping your home safe and functional as you age, that bill can add up faster than you think. For example, let's say you need someone to come help you with meals and medication management a few times a week. Over the course of a month, that can easily run you into the thousands of dollars, and that's without considering the potential long-term need for more intensive care as your health changes. And don't forget about the expenses of maintaining your home, the yard work, the repairs, the utilities, because once that's added up, the cost of staying at home might be higher than you ever imagined, especially if your health requires more frequent professional support. On the other hand, assisted living facilities often provide a more predictable cost structure. Yes, the monthly fee might seem like a large chunk of change, but it covers not just your rent, but also all the meals, housekeeping, utilities 24/7, care if needed, and even some social activities that might be priceless in terms of your overall well-being. And here's the kicker. Many of these facilities also offer a sliding scale for care needs, so if you only need minimal assistance now, you won't be paying for more than you need. For some, assisted living can be a more cost-effective solution when you consider all the services bundled into that monthly fee. But I get it. It's not just about what's cheaper in the short term, it's about the long-term picture, and that's where things get tricky. In my own experience, I've seen families who were initially shocked by the cost of assisted living, only to realize that the convenience and quality of care actually saved them money in the long run, because they didn't have to hire multiple in-home services, pay for emergency medical visits, or deal with the escalating costs of staying in their own home. It's all about comparing apples to apples, so take a minute to think about the full scope of what you're paying for right now versus what you'd get in an assisted living situation. Do the math and be honest with yourself. Does it still feel like a better deal to stay in your home, or does assisted living start to look more appealing? And while we're on the subject of finances, let's not forget that there are ways to make assisted living more affordable, whether that's by utilizing insurance, veterans benefits, or even family support. Many communities offer financial advisors or consultants who can help you break down all the options, and I highly recommend taking advantage of those resources. Don't let money be the reason you don't make the best decision for yourself. There's often more flexibility than you might think, and exploring your options can lead to some surprising discoveries. Now, I know this can feel like a lot of numbers and considerations to juggle, but take your time with it, and don't hesitate to reach out to those around you who can offer guidance, whether that's a financial expert or even just a friend who's been through the process before. The key is to weigh all the costs, both financial and emotional, so you can make the decision that best supports you and your quality of life. And with that, you're already on your way to making a more informed and empowered choice. But before we wrap things up, there's one more huge factor we need to talk about, and that's the emotional and social side of the equation. Because, let's face it, no matter how practical or financial your decision is, it won't mean much if it leaves you feeling isolated, lonely, or disconnected from the world around you. So in the final part of this conversation, we'll dive into how to assess your emotional needs and find the solution that helps you stay connected, fulfilled, and happy no matter which path you choose. Stay with me, we're almost there. As we wrap up the financial considerations and move into the final part of this journey, I want to talk about something that often gets overlooked in all the talk of money, services, and logistics, and that's you. Yes, you, the person at the heart of this decision. Because while the practical aspects of assisted living or home care are vital, the emotional and social elements are just as important. Let's face it, one of the hardest parts about aging is the isolation that can sneak up on you, especially if you're living alone or if your care needs limit your ability to get out and engage with the world. And let's be real. When we talk about aging in place, it sounds great in theory, but what about the reality of feeling isolated, lonely, or disconnected from your community? That's something no one talks about enough. Yet it has a huge impact on our well-being as we age. So here's the fifth question you need to ask. How will my emotional and social needs be met if I stay at home or move into assisted living? This is where you have to get a little introspective. Think about your daily life right now. Do you have regular visits from friends, family, or neighbors? Are you still involved in activities you enjoy, whether that's volunteering, attending church, or meeting up with friends for a coffee or a meal? For many of us, aging can feel like we've been put on the sidelines, and as our physical abilities change, we often lose touch with the social networks we once had. That's a tough reality, but it doesn't mean it's inevitable. If you're at home, you might be able to maintain some of those connections with help from in-home caregivers or support services. But let's face it, there's only so much energy and time a person can devote to managing all the logistics of getting out, socializing, and keeping up with activities. And there's the danger that when you're alone all day, day in and day out, those opportunities for connection slowly slip away. Now, I'm not saying you're doomed to loneliness if you stay at home, but I do want you to be honest with yourself about how your emotional and social needs will be met. Because if we're being real, that sense of connection, community, and engagement is just as important for your health as any physical care you might need. And this is where assisted living can really shine. Many of these communities focus not just on medical care, but also on social care. There are group activities, exercise classes, outings, game nights, and even shared meals that encourage residents to interact, form bonds, and create a new sense of community. For many seniors, this can be a lifeline, a way to not just survive, but thrive in the later years. It's not just about having people around. It's about having people around who understand what you're going through, who share similar life experiences, and who are looking for companionship, just like you. You might be worried that moving into assisted living means giving up all your personal space or your sense of autonomy, but many modern communities are designed with that balance in mind. You can still have your own room, your own routines, and your own sense of privacy, but you'll also get the benefits of having a built-in social network that makes it easier to stay engaged, mentally sharp, and emotionally fulfilled. And let's not forget that making new friends and having new experiences in your later years can actually improve your mental and physical health, giving you a greater sense of purpose and joy. I've spoken with so many folks who made the leap into assisted living and found not just new friends, but a renewed sense of independence because they had more help with the tasks that had been draining them, which allowed them to spend more energy on the things they loved, like crafting, gardening, or socializing. It's a beautiful thing when you can finally focus on the parts of life that bring you joy, instead of just the daily grind of managing your own care. But I don't want you to feel pressured by this, whether you choose to stay at home with assistance or make the move to assisted living. It's all about finding the environment that supports your needs, your peace of mind, and your happiness. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer, but it's about getting clear on what you want out of your later years and being proactive in designing a lifestyle that gives you the space and support you deserve. So now that we've explored all these key questions, what do you think? Are you feeling more confident in your ability to make this decision? Or maybe a little overwhelmed, but ready to take it one step at a time? Either way, I want you to remember that you don't have to make these choices alone. You've got resources, people, and a community that's ready to support you. And if you've found this conversation helpful, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button, because we'll be diving deeper into other topics that matter to you, like how to navigate healthcare, how to stay mentally sharp as you age, and so much more. Plus, by subscribing, you're joining a community of like-minded individuals who are committed to making these years the best they can be together. If you're unsure about the next step, or if you're already in the midst of making this decision, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What are your biggest concerns and what's helped you along the way? Let's keep this conversation going. And don't forget to like this video if it's been helpful to you. I know how important it is to make these decisions with clarity and confidence. And if this video has done that for you, it would mean a lot to know it's making a difference. You're not just planning for a future, you're creating the best possible version of that future, and that's worth celebrating. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.